What is going on, Tentacle? My name is Billy the Squid, and yesterday I put out a video documenting some of the concerns that I have with Elden Ring from Software and the engine that they're using. But today I want to push all of that aside and talk about more what I am excited about the most about Elden Ring coming out. Some of the stuff that a lot of people may not have noticed or glanced over when talking about Elden Ring, and just kind of give my thoughts on what FromSoftware is doing next, what to be excited about with this new title, because there is a ton to be excited about with Elden Ring. So let's jump right into the combat basics of it. So how Elden Ring is going to be differentiating itself from previous titles is it will bring back the Sekiro jump button. Jump attacks. So it'll be more similar to a Hellpoint style jump mechanic than I think it will be a Sekiro style jump mechanic. You're not going to have the grapple hook, or at least there is no signs of a grapple hook type device being given. But I wouldn't put it past them if there is some sort of grapple hook. Maybe it's on a resource, kind of similar to how Naraka Blade Point does its grapple hook, where grapples are a resource that you spend to use to get verticality. But I don't think they're going to be building the levels around these mechanics specifically, just because if they do go this route, it is going to be a consumable-based thing. The good thing about the jump attack and all of that stuff, or jumping in general, is it's going to open up how they can do map design. Typically, Souls games are very flat. Not a lot of verticality to them unless you're climbing staircases and whatnot, which can get tedious. This is going to add another layer of depth to the level design formula that FromSoftware is chef's kiss amazing at. They're also adding a few other items from Sekiro. They're adding a stealth mechanic that is going to be used very much like Sekiro on lesser enemies. I'm assuming you're going to be able to execute them straight up. On larger enemies, you'll just do a large chunk of damage to them. Very, very cool in that. Along with the stealth mechanic, something new that is completely out of FromSoftware's previous titles is a new status effect called Sleep. You're going to have sleep arrows. There's going to be spells that will be able to cast sleep. And this is going to kind of change up how you approach some things. Maybe there's a group of mobs that you just don't really want to contend with, so you sleep arrow them from a distance, a la Metal Gear Solid 5 with the tranquilizer gun. And this allows you to do a few different options. You can either go in and execute them, or you can go in and just kind of bypass them. This might be a better idea for larger enemies where you can just bypass them. But I have a feeling the sleep is also going to open up a visceral style attack, where if an enemy is asleep and it's not an enemy that you're going to execute outright while asleep, it will do a big chunk of damage and start off the fight in a good way towards your favor. I have a feeling that this is going to be something that, similar to other status effects, enemies will build up a resistance to this as you use it on them, so it's not going to be something that you're going to be able to cheese large enemies with by just constantly putting them to sleep and then knocking them down. Visceral attacking, wash, rinse, repeat. I have a feeling that's not going to be how they're going to implement this mechanic. Another thing that they are doing is the weapon arts. Weapon arts were brought in with Dark Souls 3. Each weapon had a set of specific moves that it could do, whether it's just a standard shield break, uppercut, or something outlandish like summoning a bolt of lightning from the heavens to smite your enemies. Weapon arts were very much unique to the weapon in that game, and they are not going to be that way in Elden Ring. Elden Ring is adding the weapon skills to the loot table. They are going to be something that you go into dungeons, go into world encounters, fight large enemies to get. They are going to be something that you are going to seek out and strive for, because they are going to be completely customizable depending on whatever weapon you want to put them on. I'm sure there are going to be some caveats to this weapon art system where some weapon like classes just won't be able to. Like, for instance, I have a feeling a dagger is not going to have some of these similar weapon arts that, say, a greatsword or ultra greatsword class might have. There might be a few caveats, but I have a feeling like more of the outlandish stuff like the magic might be universal across all the bounds. And I honestly hope it's as universal as it can possibly be. Since they are adding these things to the loot table, they are something that you want to seek out, and nothing would suck more than to seek something out, find something really cool, and then find out, oh, it's just not customizable on the weapon set that I am using. So I hope they make it as universal as possible with the weapon skills. Very, very cool that they are making it a customizable asset to really help flesh out builds even more so than previous titles already did. More fun combat mechanics that are being added. Have you ever been in Dark Souls 3 and you're just like, yeah, I'm not going to use a shield, but then you do block that one time. There's like, I'm just going to block with my weapon just to see how it feels. You might be using a straight sword. You might be using an ultra great sword. And you block with that weapon, you take a huge amount of chip damage, you take a huge amount of stamina damage, and it could also open you up to a visceral attack if they perhaps
15.
broke your guard with that attack. That is maybe going to still be the case. You're still probably going to take chip damage. You're probably still going to take a bit of stamina damage, but I think it is going to be brought down because they have added a new mechanic when blocking with a weapon. Now, when you block with a weapon and you go and attack immediately after, it will give you a counterattack animation. This is going to be something that is most likely going to gap close you or bring you back into the aggression. I'm assuming there's going to be an R1 and an R2 variant with a strong or light counterattack, but it is just going to give you another option for blocking, whereas before blocking with a weapon was almost entirely a downside. Now there is actually a little bit of a use for that, and depending on how they implement it, some of those attacks could be pretty good. A few lesser things as far as the combat goes. Summoning has been overhauled completely and it is now part of your build. Summons are something that you're going to seek out in the overworld, just like the weapon skills, weapon arts are. And they're going to be something that you equip to yourself. You get to choose which summons you bring into the fight. They're not going to be a thing where you can summon them in any time that you want to. They're only going to be able to be summoned in at certain spots, gravestones, obelisks, stuff like that. They'll have a blue glow to them. That will show that, hey, this is a place where you can use your summon. Also, summons are going to use up mana, so they are just fully committing to summons being a part of the build, which means summons, just like the previous games, are completely optional. If it's not something that you want to spec into, if it's not something you want to spend the resources on, you are not going to be expected to, and the game is not going to be balanced around this mechanic, I do not believe. The worst thing that I think they could do would be make it so that it's like Code Vein, where some of the boss encounters or some of the more difficult encounters feel like they are entirely balanced around having a summon system. I feel like these games should have as much 1v1 capabilities as possible and then have the summons be on top of that. And this is specifically for the spirit summons. I don't think if they're going to have it cost mana, if they're going to have it cost resources to actually be able to use this, I don't think it needs to affect the world in any way. I don't think it needs to increase boss health. I think that's only really going to be for player with player co-op, and we'll get to that here later. Last few things about ground combat, because boy are they overhauling the combat system, and I am excited. For one, we have guarantees that there is a twin blade weapon type coming back into the game, which gets people theory crafting that, hey, maybe there will be trick weapons a la Bloodborne. This is a little bit far-fetched, but modders have been able to put trick weapons into the Dark Souls 3 engine, and it could very well be possible that not all of the weapons, but some of the weapons, maybe some of the boss weapons, for instance, could have trick weapon properties to them, and I think that would be really cool. I also hope that they bring him back in power stancing. Dark Souls 3 departed from what Dark Souls 2 built for the power stance system in favor of having weapons that were set up to be akimboed. This is fine. This is dandy. Can we get both? I would love to see weapons that come as a pair, and then you have the ability to use them both in a power stance situation, or you can use them solo. Similar to what they did in Dark Souls 3 with the co-op weapons, or the akimbo weapons, I guess I should say. But make it universal. Make it so that I can have my dual giant great hammers and just pancake everything. It was a very good mechanic that Dark Souls 2 added. A lot of people like to gripe on Dark Souls 2, but it was an innovative mechanic that they added, and I think it would be really good in this game to completely add another layer to build variety. And speaking of another layer, this game is bringing a mount, which means mounted combat, and there is a ton of cool things about the mount. So from what it is being talked about and what it is shown, you can go from mounted to unmounted seamlessly in the middle of combat. You can also use your sword. You can use arrows. You can use magic, all while mounted on your ride. This is wonderful. This is very, very good. And I hope that they really flesh out this mounted combat system. I would love to see encounters that are completely based around mounted combat system that aren't gimmicky. The biggest fear with the mounted combat system is that it's going to be a gimmick style mechanic that's not going to get fully fleshed out. I have a feeling that they're really going to be working or have been working on this system, since it is one of the bigger advances that they've done and something that they've never done in any of the previous titles. I would love to see encounters that have it so that you need to kind of ebb and flow between mounted and unmounted combat. It has been said in interviews that you might want to use the mount for larger enemies and then jump off the mount for maybe multiple enemies or groups of smaller enemies. I would like to see mechanics where it's like you start off on horseback, you're chasing something down, you wound it off horseback, then you jump off horseback, you do some ground combat with it, and then it either flies off or does a super AoE attack that you need to summon your ride, either chase this down or get out of the AoE area, maybe do another mounted segment, and then jump back onto the ground for the finisher. That would be something that I would like to see them do. I would like to see an ebb and flow. The Souls games are always about a give and take. With every enemy action, there is a proper reaction that the player needs to have, and I would like to see mounting up onto your horse be a feasible reaction to an enemy's attacks. Now to get out of the combat section and some of the more nuanced things that might have been overlooked because they're not as flashy, because they're not the central gameplay point. For one, there is not going to be a HUD in this game. There is going to be a map, and we'll get to that later, but there is not going to be a HUD like most open world games have. There's not going to be a mini-map like most open world games have. At least that is what is being talked about right now. As far as I know, the checkpoints, or graces as they're called in this game, are going to have light strands that are going to come out of them, and they're kind of going to point you into the directions that you're going to want to go towards new objectives. The map is going to have map markers that you can freely place all over the map, and in the overworld, it is going to show as pillars of light. I'm assuming based on the color of the marker, there's going to be multiple colored markers that you can put down. You'll see a different pillar of light. And this will give you something to work towards if you are wanting to mark like a resource pool or a difficult enemy for later. It will make it so that you don't need the HUD to be able to navigate. This is so much more world building than what it would be just to have a HUD or a minimap that has a diamond on. Very, very good. Very happy about this. Also, last thing I want to bring up is fast travel will be universal between the graces, so this isn't something that you're going to have to earn later. You will be able to freely fast travel from place to place and not have to walk across the world if you don't want to. Talking about the graces, though, this is where you are able to regen your healing resources. This is going to reset the world enemies. And this is where you're going to summon Melina, the new maiden of this game, or Melina. I don't know how you pronounce her name. I haven't heard it pronounced by them. But this is where you're going to summon the maiden for the game. What does this maiden do? She is going to allow you to level, she is going to allow you to change your spirits, and she is going to allow you to change your weapon skills. This is a great, great thing. Compared to Dark Souls 3, where you had to go back to the HUD world, which there is a HUD world, you are now going to be able to more freely customize on the fly and not have to have that load screen, go back to the HUD, have that load screen, go back to the main. It's going to keep the pacing a little bit better. Also, with this game, it has been said that mobbed enemies or large enemies in the overworld are going to allow you to get a bit of health back, so it's going to kind of stretch out the amount of time you're able to spend out. If you're burning through your healing resources, maybe think about not doing that if you think you can take out the encounter without using a healing resource. Clearing that encounter will most likely heal you up to a point where you feel comfortable moving forward again, and this is going to be super helpful, as from what I understand, graces are a lot more spread out, and some graces are actually dropped from world bosses or large mob encounters. You're gonna have to do a big feat to unlock some of these graces, and I think that's really, really cool. It's going to add another layer to the Dark Souls formula. Has always had that, oh man, I really need a bonfire right now, where is it? It's been so long. This is going to add another layer on top of that. Like, okay, I need to earn this bonfire. And I think that kind of goes with the overall theme of this game, with the Tarnished trying to rebuild their glory. I think that hits the nail right on the head for that. The last thing I want to bring up about the map is it is not going to be fleshed out by you actually going and roaming around the map like some open world games do. The map is going to be something that's filled out through map fragments that you're going to find in dungeons, open world events, stuff like that. It's another item for the loot table, and I think this is a good route to go with it. And it will make it so that it is more meaningful for you to actually go out and seek these side paths, at least in your first few playthroughs, until you're familiar with the world itself. Back to the hub world, though, there are going to be a hub world. It's going to be a round table type situation where NPCs that you find will gather. This is most likely going to be where you have your vendors, where you have your weapon upgrades, your gear upgrades, and whatever other upgrades that you're going to need. This is where you're going to find it. You're also going to be able to find your merchants here, most likely. Very, very cool that they're still keeping a hub world, but not leaving you locked to it for every single customization that you need to do. And the last thing I want to bring up in regards to Elden Ring, because there is so much to be excited about with this game, is the refleshed and revamped co-op system. They have said in interviews that they are wanting to unlock the co-op system as much as they possibly can. They are not wanting to have it locked like it is in prior games, where at its worst, it was locked behind soul memory. It was locked, like in Bloodborne, behind world status, Bell Maidens, stuff like that. They don't want anything like that with this particular game. You don't need to be human. You don't need to be embered. You can summon your friends in whenever you want to. This is wonderful for the growing community that these games have had to be able to intermingle and help each other. It's not going to have that like gated access to a co-op experience, which I think is a wonderful, wonderful thing. As well as they are kind of removing the instanced mentality from the co-op system. In the exclusive footage that some of the top creators have seen, co-op does not end after you beat a boss. Co-op will continue so that you're able to bring your co-op partner along with side paths that you haven't done before. You're able to bring your co-op partner into areas that you have cleared before. And this is great. I can't tell you how many times I have cleaned out a boss and then realized that there's a side path that I wanted to clear out with my friend that I'm just not able to do that now because we've already cleaned out the boss. It's not a possibility at this point. So very, very cool that they're opening up co-op. But yes, this is my excitement and the genius behind Elden Ring and what FromSoftware is bringing to the table. I could not be more excited for this game. I think that they're going to do great and wonderful things with this, and this is going to be the perfect swan song to the engine that they have been using and ramp them up for the next generation and what is going to come next. I could not be more excited about the future of FromSoftware games, and I don't think that FromSoftware is dropping the ball at all with this game. I think they're going to bring their A game, as they always do, and bring a truly unique and exciting experience to the table that is going to have more replayability than any other title that they've had. I know a lot of people hated on Sekiro because it didn't have replayability, but Sekiro did so many leaps and bounds with the engine that just weren't possible in the other games. And I think that them being brought into this is going to be a culmination of everything good that FromSoftware has done. So, Elden Ring 2022. We have a release date for it. Be excited. I'm excited. And I will see you all in the next video. Much love, Tenant Crew.